Hello, everybody. Hope you're all doing well today. Great seeing you. So, today I'd like to take a moment to talk about API security. As we move on in our day and age, there are new APIs popping up every single day, and of course, there are new hackers popping up as well. These threats are something that we have to take seriously because they can cause serious reputation damage. And of course, there are many different ways to handle these threats. We can harden our APIs against these attackers, and there are several different ways that we can do that. We can do that close to the source by protecting our APIs themselves, by protecting our applications. We can do that by, for example, using input sanitation. We can do that by obfuscating certain things like our JavaScript files. And those are all things that can deter attackers, definitely. But if we really want to be secure, we can never rely on one system alone, of course. And as we implement more and more security measures, there is a cost connected to that. Nothing comes for free. That's where API firewall comes in. Now, what this tool does, first of all, is it's free. That's something that not a lot of other web application firewalls have, but it's also very lightweight, allowing us to not go too deep into, not spend too much resources into inspecting our traffic. Today I'd like to take a moment to go over installation of this specific tool, but also what all of these environment variables are and how we can use them to our advantage. Now, there are a couple of things that I'd like to highlight specifically, and we'll go through them as we move on to them. Let's first of all start by installing a demo API, because of course we need an API that we can test on. We need something to protect. So what the fine folks at Zalando have done for us is they've created a connection API, and this API we're going to use in our case for testing our firewall on. And for this API, all we have to do is install the pip requirements. So we'll do that with Python pip, and pip is basically a package manager for Python. So as you can see, when we type the command pip install and then our connection manager, we can see that we have Jinja installed, markup save. So all of the different requirements that we need are going to be installed with this one pip command. Very useful. When we have that installed, of course, we're going to change into our temp directory, and then we're going to clone the specific API demo. So this is the code itself for the API demo, and we can notice that ourselves as well, of course, if we move into the temp folder and then into the connection folder. There we have a couple of folders. One specific one that's interesting is the example/open API folder. If we look in here, there's a couple of files that we can see that are important. In this case, we want to move into the method resolver directory, and in here we can see that we have the app.py. Now, app.py in our case is what we're going to use to start our application. As you can see, as I'm typing python app.py, when it executes, of course I meant python 3 app.py. There we go. Now my app is starting up, and then you can see that it's running specifically on this IP address, on this specific port. So that's where the API is running at this moment. I'm going to kill it for now because I'm going to set up my API firewall as well. That's something that's very important. So what I'm going to do is, of course, I have Docker installed already. It's important that you have that installed. If you don't, on Linux, it's a simple sudo apt-get install docker.io or yum install docker.io, of course, depending on your flavor of Linux. And then if you have Docker installed, you can simply do docker pull wallarm /API firewall. Now, as you can see, I did this live on stream and it happened very fast. So that should be a first indication of how lightweight this WAF really is. Now, of course, from this specific docker pull command, we need to set up our container, because now we have a Docker image, and what Docker is going to allow us to do is it's going to allow us to take a configuration file, that's what we call an image, and it's going to build a container out of that. And that container is what's going to run our API firewall. So that's very useful because it's going to make our installation extremely fast. Now that we have our Docker API pulled. Now that we have the API firewall pulled, from the Docker hub, we can actually run it. So I'm going to use this command for that, and I'm going to go into the specific flags later on. First of all, I'm going to run my Docker container. So we have that running now, and I can check that by typing docker container ls. And there we can actually see that I do have my container ID here and the specific image that I'm running with the command that I'm running it, when it was created, and what the status is, on what ports it's running, and the names that it's been given. So for that, I know that my Docker container is now running. To check the logs from this specific Docker container, I can go docker logged, and then I can look at, of course, I need to take that specific Docker ID. So let's do docker logs and then copy the ID that it gave us here and then paste it behind here. And now, as you can see, we see that we show the logs for that Docker container stating what specific parameters were used. So here we can see where the API specifications have been specified. This is really important. And this is the temp folder of the container, by the way. This is not my local machine. This is the temp folder of the container. We'll get more into that later. So as you can see, we've mounted that specific YAML file onto the temp folder of the container, and that's where the API specs reside. And that's where we can see that we have a get call, a post call, a delete call, another get call for a specific pet ID, and a put call also on a specific pet ID. That all seems to work fine. Now on to the next step, of course, we need to test if what we have running actually works. So, we first of all, of course, we need to start up our specific application again, our API, because at the moment there is no API that's being protected. Now to do this, what I'm going to do is I want to start up my specific API in the background because I still want to be able to check my Docker logs in the end. So to do this, I use the no hangup command. This is going to ensure that even if I disconnect from my secure shell session, that it won't matter all that much because my command will still be running in the background. And I can also use the ampersand parameter to send my command to the background. Now, as I do that, I notice that a file nohangup.out is created. I can look at that specific file later on and I can check the logs of my application that's being started up here. So as I type my python 3 app.py command, it's starting up an API and it's writing the output of the console to the nohub.out. I can also check that by issuing a tail command and then checking the nohub contents. So as you can see here, the server is started. We're seeing the same things that we saw before. I can also do a cut of that just to make sure. There we go. You can now see that I do have the entire same output as I used to before. And that's what we needed in this case. Now that I have my application running, I have my firewall running, we can try issuing some commands, of course. Now, the first command that we're going to issue is actually a curl, and we're going to try and make a correct curl call to see if this works. So if we look at the specific API specifications, there we can see some really useful things. So what I'm going to do real quick is I'm going to look at where on my local machine these API specifications can be found. Now I'm going to quickly do that to explain the find command. So I start at my root directory. I look for a name called, and we notice that here, called pets-api.yaml file. And as you can see on my local folder, it's going to be in that connections folder that I just downloaded in the OpenAPI folder of the method resolver. So we're in that folder right now. Let's move to the OpenAPI folder. And in here, indeed, we should find the YAML file. Let's cat this specific file and look at what's actually required of this API. So whenever we make a call, we can see that we have a couple of things in here. We can see, first of all, the endpoint. We can see the type of request that's being made. And then we can see the responses and also if things are required or not. For example, if we make a put request, to the pet endpoint, we can see that we require, if we move down a little bit, error required, code and message, of course. So it's going to be a required name in this instance, as you can see here, tag type string red, and name also type string example fluffy. And then we also need an identifier for this. So these are the API specifications that are going to be read in by API firewall. And API firewall is either going to be blocking or logging your traffic, depending on what you set it to, of course. But again, we'll get more into that later, based on these API specifications. So based on these specifications, we should also be able to make up a call, which we did right here. We can see that we are making a curl command. We're issuing a curl command with the method put, a specific header in here, that's content type application JSON, and then we are using the body name, and then we're giving it a name and a tag. So as we make that put request, we can see that we get a response in this case, which is good. Now, of course, if we make a put request that doesn't have a string in the name, then we're going to find an error because, of course, the API specifications specify that we need a string in the name and not an integer. Now, from our front end, we're not going to see much in this case, but if I look at those Docker logs that I had open in the beginning, then I can actually see what is being blocked and what's not. As you can see in this case, the API firewall is actually telling me that I have an error being occurring, request validation error. The request body has an error. It doesn't match the schema. Error at /name field must be set to string or not be present. And then schema, it's telling me what schema it's using to verify my response from, my request from. And then I can see value number in integer. So this is what it was, this is what it was expecting. And then I can also, of course, see the IP addresses. That's also pretty important. The specific IP address that issued that request is also logged. That's useful later on for investigations. Now, that's pretty much what I can do. I can also try issuing a blocked command in here, like a command, a put request that doesn't have a name in it. That's going to issue the same response for me again. But if I look on the server, I can see that again I have a request validation error, but this time my schema doesn't match at name because name is missing. So as you can see, there are quite a lot of details that we can actually go into, and the logging is pretty well documented. You can see a lot of what's going on by just reading your error messages. So that's pretty cool, of course. Let's look at what we just typed, because when we did start this Docker container, we did put in a few flags as well, and I want to go through each and every single one of them just to make sure that everybody understands what we just did. So we have a -d flag here, and what this D flag is going to do is it's going to allow our Docker container to run in the background. That's really useful because then we don't have to keep it open, of course. And then we can issue the -v command, and this is going to mount a volume. That's that volume that we talked about with the YAML file for the API specifications. It's going to mount that to the temp folder. And then, of course, we have the -e parameter, which is environment variables. Now, these are variables that have been set by the API firewall team that we then can influence. These are very useful, and we'll look at all of the environment variables in a second. But for now, what we've set is the API firewall server URL, and this is the specific API that we are protecting in this case, which resides on port 9090, like we saw before, and also version 1.0. And then we also have an environment variable for the API specs, which is, again, this is going to be a parameter which is going to be the temp folder on the container, not on my local drive, of course. Now, this environment variable is going to be used into these parameters later on, and that's something that has been done by the API firewall team for us. The request validation environment variable allows us to either block or log a response which hits the request validations. We can also do the same for response validations, of course. I usually set these to block, but it depends on what behavior you want the firewall to display. And then we have the -p parameter in here, which is going to allow us to map a specific port from the container to a specific port of our local machine. So this is going to route all of the traffic from port 8282 on the container to port 8282 on the local machine, which will allow us in turn to talk to our API. We can to our API firewall. We can of course see that as well in the curl command that we are issuing. We are talking to port 8282 and not to port 9090, although that would also work in this case if we try this. That's not going to be a problem. As you can see here, we do get a response back from this. But of course, in a real life scenario, you would block off this port 9090 and you would ideally only allow people or your customers to communicate with the API via the API firewall. So that's it for all of these specific parameters that we've given to our command. Now let's open the Docker page real quick. So let's open the API firewall Docker hub page real quick, and let's have a look at all of the other environment variables that we can use. Because as you can see, we have used this one API firewall URL, but we can also choose which log level we should include. Now, by default, as you can see, this will be on debug, but it could also be info, error, warning, or debug. So either one of those, whichever you prefer. Now, API firewall also has a read and a write timeout setting and a shutdown timeout, which you can set up as well. And then we have the specific request and response validation techniques that we talked about, block, log only. And of course, there's also a disable option. If you don't want response or request validations, you can disable either one of those. As for the TLS section, you can see here that we can set up the API firewall TLS certifications path. We can set up the file and the certificate key as well. Now we can also set up the specifications. That's what we of course did before as well, where we mounted our specification file to the local temp folder, and then we're going to give that temp/pets api.yaml file as a parameter. We can also, of course, set up our server, set the maximum connections per host that are allowed. Then we can also set up the server read timeouts and write timeouts as well, and the dial timeouts. So this is the ping. Now, of course, there are some performance benchmarks that are in here as well. These are just to show how well it works, and we can execute these performance benchmarks ourselves as well using Apache Bench. If there's more time after the questions, we might actually execute this just to show you guys just how performant API firewall really is. For now, I'd like to thank you all very much for your attention, and I'd like to ask if there are any more questions. Thank you very much, and I will see you soon.